Hello, I'm in Interweb Studios and today we ask Reddit. Ladies, what are some red flags you can't ignore in men? I don't really have much more to say besides let me know the worst red flags in the comments section down below. With that out of the way, sit back and enjoy. Never apologizing. Agreed. Never being willing to admit fault, being overly defensive. I gotta be honest, I was terrible for this the first few years of my relationship. After a good talk about each of our issues and a long few months of me actively trying to change the way I handle arguments, discussions, etc., I can happily say that I will admit straight away if I'm in the wrong and hardly ever raise my voice anymore. It was hard to finally admit that I needed to see things from other perspectives before just deciding what was right and wrong, but ultimately it's made my relationship with my kids and partner 100 times better, and I can't remember the last time we fell out or had an argument anymore. Always making excuses rather than just saying I fucked up. What can I do to rectify this situation? What do you need right now? I made the mistake of not running the first time my ex wouldn't apologize for something major. Now I'm in trauma from not only his affair but his inability to just own his shit and apologize. I will never let this one slide ever again should I choose to date again. When I worked at KFC, there was a girl whose boyfriend would stay parked outside the door during her entire shift. That is not something I've seen commonly, and it's a huge red flag. That happened with a girl I worked with as well. She worked 12-hour shifts and he would sit outside looking in at her for the 12 hours. Then sometimes he'd come in like a sad puppy talking to her. Genuinely pathetic and psycho. I guess the guy didn't have a job. Funniest part is that he did. Ignorant arrogance, doesn't seem capable of changing his mind or seeing other perspectives. Arrogance breeds ignorance, which in turn breeds stupidity. I don't mean to hijack your comment, but this is a really important one. My mom left my dad when I was 12 and kept so much to herself about him that I learned when I was in my late 20s. And it all came back to ignorant arrogance. And I ended up having the same issues with my dad that she had decades apart. It's important to talk about because men like this won't change and will keep doing the same thing to new people. I know a guy whose favorite response to anything is "can't know it." Makes me want to push him down a flight of stairs. I'm attempting to co-parent with a person like this. It's made my therapist very wealthy. If they have a kid, not being involved in their kid's life and making excuses why they aren't or can't be. And when every ex they have is crazy but they can't admit to any toxicity of their own in any relationship ever. I matched with this guy once. We're only on day 2 of talking via text. He mentions he has a daughter. It wasn't on his profile. I stated I wasn't interested. I'm child-free by choice and I don't want to get involved with someone with a kid. He said, well, I never see her anyways. Psycho ex got the courts to say I couldn't, so it's not a problem. Bro, that's way worse. This guy accidentally waved a red flag and then tried to backpedal by erecting a whole red embassy. I just went through this exact situation this summer. Met a guy, never let on he had children. Turns out he had a few children with a crazy ex-wife who was keeping his children from him. Had every excuse under the sun as to why he couldn't see his children, called his ex so many mean names. Sure, it's possible she wasn't a good person to him, but to speak so poorly about the mother of his children was an incredible turn-off. I never cared to learn anymore and ran as fast as I could from that situation. Had been talking to a guy on a dating app for a couple of weeks, even FaceTimes with him. I went for first date in a pub for a meal, got there and he was already there. He came over to me and chatted for a couple of minutes at the bar. He mentioned he was already seated at the table, with his mother, like that red flag could be seen in several alternative dimensions. She was all excited to be there, even cancelled some other evening out she was meant to be going to come on this date, also stated that when son couldn't be bothered to message me she had replied. I calmly finished my drink. Looked him square in the eye and directed him to the local maternity unit. Told him to ask the midwives to cut the umbilical cord this time and left. Just so you know, I was early 50s and he was late 50s, so we weren't kids. That was the biggest red flag I'd even seen. Blocked him, and technically her on everything immediately. When they cannot discuss sexual health like an adult. If you're having sex, you need to discuss birth control, condoms, and STDs. Recently had STD talk with a 48-year-old male. He tells me he's never been tested for anything. Says he's just choosy about who he sleeps with, so he knows he's never had anything because he would be able to tell if his partner's had an STD. This from a sexually active man that doesn't use condoms often. I was stunned that anyone could still be this ignorant. Oh my word, I had a similar experience. Final, he got one because I was going to dump him, and guess who had chlamydia? Also things pertaining to women's health like pap smears and personal hygiene products. If you're mature enough to stick your dick in it, you're mature enough to learn and discuss what goes on with it medically. I second that. My last ex was the only one allowed to talk about his bowel movements and facts, but if I talked about mine in return, it grossed him out. And I kind of enjoy talking about that kind of stuff. My fiancé now also enjoys it. We talk facts about our respective genitalia and learn from each other and laugh a lot. So refreshing, honestly. I've never been with someone mature enough that typically awkward conversations were not awkward or downright taboo. That's why he's my fiancé. When they have to always one-up you. Oh, I see you've met my father. That's nothing. You should meet my dad. My dad can beat you, dad. I recently learnt that some people assume one-upping them is just adding your experience to a conversation. Maybe I'm dumb, but if someone says, I went to Spain on holiday to Benidorm, it was so much fun, and I say, oh, I've been to Benidorm as well. It was really good. What was your favorite part? Some people would take this as one-upping, when in my opinion, it's just a conversation with two people and not just one person talking at the other. Pfui, I don't see your example as one-upping. It really sucks how some people might interpret it as such though. One-upping would be bringing up your shared experience, then emphasizing it was somehow a better experience than their friends. OMG, the worst one-uppers also love to one-up others' misery. Oh, you think you work hard? Well, I stayed up till 3 a.m. doing blah blah blah. Alright, I have to admit I personally never had a girlfriend. But I do think this next one is probably red flag I personally would show. Here we go. Easily lost patience and out of control temper over minor things. I dated a guy once who had an argument over the phone with a family member. After he got off the phone, he picked up a picture frame that was nearby and just smashed it onto the ground, sending glass everywhere. The argument was something to do with a book. We had been dating for maybe 2 months. He was 26. Massive red flag that one was. Yeah, I dated a guy for a bit who punched a door after a phone call with his boss. It wasn't even anything serious like being reprimanded, he was just frustrated about a sudden change in scheduling. He also threw things sometimes and was a very angry driver, constantly laying on the horn and yelling and swearing. I was so scared to be in a car with him. But when I got upset about his behavior, I was being too sensitive. If they always need to be right. I talked to a guy who would unsend messages on Instagram if he said something wrong in them. You look smarter if you concede and say, oh, I was mistaken. Not only that, but when they also blame everything on something else. I once talked to someone who never acknowledged it was his fault despite it clearly being. Had someone like that too, who basically told me to never hold anything against me. Like even when she cheated on me, instead of apologizing or trying to find a dumb explanation for it, she went off on me for holding it against her. Like what the duck? Definitely glad it happened in the early stages, lol, I just noped out of there. Inconsistent, all words no actions, love bombing in the beginning. Just to let you know, love bombing is showering a person with a disingenuous level of affection. Not a guy, but I have a horrible habit of love bombing, When I became aware of it, I started to follow the other person's lead in new relationships so as not to come off as needy or anything. Is that the better thing to do? I learned to ask myself, do I like him instead of does he like me when dating? I'm also a compulsive love bomber. It's a hard habit to unlearn when you aren't doing it to be deceptive to get what you want. I just have a fear of my feelings not being outwardly big enough to be known or understood. When I realized that that can be manipulative regardless of intent, I started to try to curb the impulse. I don't think it's healthy no matter the intent. When every single ex they have was crazy. I tried to explain to a friend once that maybe all of his exes weren't crazy and he ended up getting blackout drunk and tried to fight me. Imagine being that unaware that you don't realize how insane everyone else is wrong, not me sounds. I just never talk about my exes because 4 of the last 5 people I dated were legitimately crazy. The first was living a double life. We dated for 2 years. I met her parents and all that jazz. Her dad even wanted to know when we'd get married. Then I found out she was also in a long-distance relationship with some other dude that lived out of town, had told him she didn't have any family, and that's where she was going whenever she'd visit her sister. The second stalked me while we were dating, and then continued for a year after I broke up with her after I'd found out. The third didn't want to label things. Turns out she was hoping her ex-fiancé would get back together with her. They eventually did, but she kept seeing me on the side and didn't tell me they got back together. I only found out when the fiancé showed up to her place while I was there. Apparently she decided to do a surprise visit. And the last was just super controlling, wanted to dictate when I could see friends and family, etc. Then she tried to stab me when I broke up with her. Then I had to get a restraining order after she tried to break into my mom's house after called the cops claiming I'd kidnapped her. My current partner is great, but I've never mentioned any of my exes simply because it doesn't just look like a red flag, it looks like a goddamn communist party parade. Either I was extremely unlucky, or I was just attracted to the worst type of people for a while. Alrighty, time for the lightning round. Here we go. Being mean to the pets. Never tolerate your partner being cruel to your pets. When he keeps talking about his ex and how he'll never love someone else this much. Not respecting a no. Not taking it well if they don't get their way. Not taking it well if you disagree with them. Talking about women relationships as if women are a prize reward object rather than a person. Making you feel uncomfortable. Trying to pressure you to drink more, take drugs, not just offering, but trying to talk or pressure you into it if you're reluctant. Anger issues. Not being supportive of your feelings. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for sticking all the way until the end, and there is another video on screen now if you want to continue to watch my content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment any red flags I may have missed. Until next time.